Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard here this evening as we get set up to discuss our first break video of the Four Nations break. Looking forward to talking about some Edmonton Oilers trade targets. And this is just nothing hard hitting. This is just some personal feelings, some personal floating, some ideas. So if that's not your cup of tea, that's all fine and dandy. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what I view the Oilers' strategy to be and what I view the Oilers' needs to be, because it's kind of getting to be unique here for the Oilers given the emergence of Corey Perry over the past 3-4 weeks, but also the still lackluster results from everybody not named Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Draisaitl outside of Corey Perry. So we'll discuss all that more here in a matter of moments. But again, if you are new to the channel right now, I will tell you I'd love to have you hit that subscribe button. We're floating just over 17,700 or 600 right now. I can't even keep track. Saw the number sometime today, but it's been a blur so far on what has been a busy weekend. So definitely would love to have you aboard. But with that, let's get to the meat and potatoes. Really, there's not much. Other than on Saturday headlines, Ryan Donato was mentioned as a player the Oilers were keeping tabs on. I know there's been updated discussion just again as people continue to remain unsatisfied with Stuart Skinner around surrounding one John Gibson and his potential suiting role with the Edmonton Oilers. Should the Oilers decide to make goaltending a priority at this point, by all sounds of it, even from Stan Bowman, goaltending is not a priority. But for the Oilers, as Oilers fans, we're always going to say goaltending is never good enough. So maybe mix column A, column B a little bit, and we'll continue to discuss John Gibson, whether it be because the Oilers are interested or because B, the fans are dissatisfied with one Stuart Skinner. And Cal Pickard's had a pretty great year, but really nothing more than Stu Skinner other than picking up some more wins. And that's simply, I would attest, the Oilers offense has been able to bail him out when he's had a rough patch in net. So there's a lot of ups and downs and curves and twists with this Edmonton Oilers roster this year. Very unique in the fact that we did get smaller over last summer. We have played our way through that with puck possession and timely goal scoring, and obviously we're a top 3 team in the NHL for the duration of the last month, it seems. So it's not like this team's horrible by any stretch, but definitely the needs and areas of improvement going into the trade deadline less than a month away have made themselves prevalent. I think adding Evander Kane to the roster adds quite a bit. There is a risk factor when it comes down to it here for the Four Nations tournament, where the Oilers have 3 players at the tournament. If one of those players gets injured, even past the regular season into the playoffs, that ultimately will also cascade the salary cap situation into a realm of who knows what you could possibly get at the trade deadline, right? If you add any of the 3 players in Arvidsson, Ekholm, or McDavid's salaries, now suddenly you're talking about 10 million plus of available cap space to play with when it comes to the trade deadline. So not that I'm wishing any of our guys get injured, just put note that that is a major risk of having these guys participate. And obviously if anything goes sideways, it's something you could keep tabs on when improving this roster come trade deadline time. So we know Ryan Donato, John Gibson, Carson, Soucy, 3 names that I think in my little absence here over the past week have been floating heavily around the Edmonton Oilers circles. Carson, Soucy, again, we talked about John Gibson being just kind of a luxury for Oilers fans to discuss because of dissatisfaction with Stuart Skinner. I think Carson, Soucy is desirable from an Oilers perspective and from a fan perspective because he is from Irma, Alberta. Great little town, by the way. If you don't know my history, definitely go back through the channel and find the game calling, the final few innings of the 2014 U21 Men's Fast Pitch National Championship in Irma, Alberta. That was my first full week play-by-play gig, and my goodness, was it an absolute time. But definitely a time when I also got to know the name Carson Soucy a little bit. But yeah, so there's that angle as well. Another local boy that you can add to the defense for the Edmonton Oilers, and why not, right? Good to go. For those of you that don't know, Irma's only like an hour and a half outside of Edmonton, so nothing major there. And then what else do we have? Well, Ryan Donato again. I think Ryan Donato's name just kind of shows that the Oilers are willing to look at every aspect of the roster, every single position, and say, where can we improve? And that's not a bad thing at all, right? If the Oilers decide they want to improve in all aspects and they have the cap space or the trade chips or whatever you need to make it happen, I'm good with it, because this Oilers team is a top 3 team now. Anything you do to make it better, as long as you don't acquire Tyler Ennis and Andrei Athanasiou 2.0, because we thought those moves would make us so much better. Again, that's a whole different set of circumstances, mind you, but you get where I'm going. Is it definitely would be a situation for the Oilers where as long as you avoid a major bobble with your assets, everything should just be up and up from the trade deadline. And if you're already top 3, President's Trophy should be in reach if one of Winnipeg or Washington were to falter down the stretch. So we'll see what happens here, friends, but definitely interesting. Again, like I'm saying, Ryan Donato is another name that just pops up, and hey, you know what? That's another whole area the Oilers are looking at over the roster. And then you look at, John Gibson's going to continue to pop up so long as Stuart Skinner gives up a goal or two. A goal or two in the first period, and fans jump all over him for that. You have Carson Soucy, a guy in Vancouver, where Vancouver's kind of spinning tires in the mud, trying to either gain traction to get up into the Pacific Division top 3 or somewhere in a solid wild card footing, or else, start selling off and rebuild this team around Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson once again. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, and I think there's tons of other names. I know Oilers Nation was talking about Jamie Alexiak there the other day for the Seattle Kraken. I think there's just going to be so much chaos here as we get through this Four Nations break. Now for those, I guess, media people around Edmonton not covering the Four Nations Cup, not on the ground there, I think they'll be spitballing a lot of player ideas, spitballing a lot of improvements for the Edmonton Oilers. And obviously as well in terms of the nets, right? If Utah kind of decides to sell off instead of treading water in the wild card race, Kirill Vjelkma could also be available in terms of net mining for the Oilers. There's a ton of possibilities here. And what I love about this trade deadline is it doesn't seem hyper focused on that's the guy. And that's nice to see for the Oilers, because they're keeping tabs on everything. And that's ultimately all we can ask for them, because you go through an off season of such change, and you kind of get a slow out of the gates performance from Jeff Skinner. He's stepped it up as of late. Victor Arvidsson's been up, down, nowhere around for most of the season for the Oilers, and really the defense outside of maybe Bouchard and Nurse and Ekholm, again, not really bringing much. Kulak had a hot start, but I really don't know what he's been bringing offensively for you lately. So it's kind of balance it where you will, and there's a whole bunch of different improvements you can make to this roster, and I don't think anyone's necessarily right, and I don't think anyone's necessarily wrong when it comes to changing the Edmonton Oilers once more at the NHL trade deadline. Friends, for right now though, I am up on out of here. Have yourself a great Sunday evening. We'll talk tomorrow. I'm going.